Okay, so this is the Whole Man Academy podcast. I can't even remember what episode it is, but it's the last one of 2020. And what a great year 2020's been. Yes, moving on. With me today, we have a couple of guys who have both been to events before, have been on some of the Zoom calls, been to Geese and Hawks, been to South Place Hotel, the different places that we've all met up for events in person, where you actually get to man hug and have a proper chat. I'm going to let them do their own introductions. So, Sunil, would you like to jump in and introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Anthony. Hey, I'm Sunil. I guess I don't know. Living in London. I guess professionally, I'm a senior UX designer or user experience designer, and I do a lot of random meetups and talks and moderate and talk at conferences when those were going. And I've done a lot of online events this year as well. So yeah, I do love to cook as well.
I was going to say, I know from your from the discussions we've had, and I've seen some of the pictures of you doing some cooking. So we're gonna jump into that as well. Thomas,
Sure.
how would you like to introduce yourself, apart from being massively well hung?
Okay, I'm not going to bother answering that one. So I'm Tom Vanderpeer. I've known Ant for going on 24 years. We used to go to school together. I work for BAE Systems. I've been there for 13 years in Rochester in Kent. And I like football. Charlton Athletic is my football team. And I played alongside Anthony when back in the early 2000s. But that's about it, really.
And you've both been to Whole Man Academy events. So, Sunil, what got you kind of how did you first hear about the Whole Man Academy to start with?
I think I heard about it through Instagram, and I think I got chatting to you early on, and then seeing those live events of just guys gathering and having open chat was very alluring.
Because I remember, especially, I was talking about you a few weeks ago on a podcast. I don't know if it was during recording or after, because I remember you messaging me saying about, do you have to wear a suit if you come to one of our events, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm sure my response was something like, and it was quite eloquent, quite deep, but I said, you wear whatever the fuck you want as long as you feel comfortable.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that means shorts, I think, for you. A lot of the time you like wearing shorts.
I think I wore shorts and a blazer at the time. I've definitely changed up my style since then.
Yeah.
But, that was good fun.
Well, tell us about, you were talking about your career before we jump into the 2020. What did you say was the user experience? Can you kind of just give us a potted idea of what that is?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the best way to describe it is, let's say, we all use food delivery apps, for instance. Let's say, take that as an example. We've usually got a choice over what type of app we use, whether it be Uber or Deliveroo or Just Eat. And generally, it's the actual experience of going through that app, rather than just the restaurants that are in there that we prefer. So I design those experiences, not specifically for those apps, but I design experiences based on customer data and business needs, and sort of marrying those two together to create a better experience for everyone.
Interesting. And how's that been affected this year, as you say, with the conferences and all that kind of stuff that stopped as well? Have you been busier or?
Work's been just as busy. I work for Aviva, so I'm designing a lot of like forms and things like that, and different kind of products. But with events, I do that on the sides, sort of thing, and that's in the design community, and we're talking about all sorts. So that's from like actually leading teams in the middle of a pandemic to food delivery, to a range of massive topics, basically.
Because I guess that's huge now with the online delivery. I mean, we don't have it because I live out in the countryside. So apart from your local Indian, there is no delivery service basically, but it's very good. But I guess in the cities and the suburbs and what have you, things like Just Eat and what have you are so so popular now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But
because we're so lazy.
There's loads of small businesses as well that have taken up that create Shopify websites, and they're delivering their own stuff as well, which is really great. So you get some really nice produce and stuff now.
The game has changed. Well, Thomas, we're going to jump into January. Can you tell me one thing that was one of your New Year's resolutions from January? And did it last?
One, it didn't last. It was to kind of lose weight and get fitter. And basically, I joined Slimming World with my wife. And at the start, first, I'll say 4 or 5 weeks, I lost using their plans and eating very well, using more veg and eating their set meals that we make. I actually lost a stone and a half, and it felt good. And then March kicked in, and lockdown, and then that was it. We had to pay extra to keep on top of it, but so I did make it last up until 3 months, but after that it was very, very hard to kind of keep the weight off, so to speak.
I think that, I mean, as we come up to the end of the year, I've had different discussions with guys through the Whole Man Academy looking towards next year. And for so many of them, often the first one for January is, their health and their fitness. And, those are two different things, because you can be really, really fit, but not necessarily particularly healthy. But, that's always one interesting one for January is, what is it you're going to, try to achieve, and how are you going to do it? I always say it's about the support network around you as well, because, it's easier if you're saying to your partner or your friends or whatever, it doesn't matter what you're trying to achieve, but, trying to tell them what you're trying to achieve to keep you on track and give you a kick in the arse when you start to, make excuses. Oh, it's a Sunday night and it's raining, so there's no way I can go and exercise or something. We always think is one of those big things is partner up with someone, or make sure you tell your partner what's important. Well, in January, we started, obviously none of us knew at the time that we were going to go into months of lockdown, but we'd started talking about setting up a podcast. And I think for us, how can I put it? What we realized was that doing the events in London were great, but you're only reaching, if you had maximum people there of 40 people, you're only going to reach 40 guys. And those guys, had to be available on the day, be able to get to London and maybe back again, because sometimes they were traveling from quite a way. Maybe say get the okay from a partner who might have said, look, you've been at work all week and I'm looking after the kids or something, and now you're disappearing off to piss around with a load of guys again. So it was quite interesting to have that, where we had our events at South Place Hotel, and then we also had one of our Whole Man Academy dinners, which was in February, and that was just before the lockdown happened, which none of us could have understood would still be rolling along, not far off a year later. So Sunil, how was that for you? Were you always working from home, and were you able to kind of adapt what you were doing?
Yeah, I mean, we were working in offices to begin with, and then it just switched to working from home, which is sort of a whole new thing to do. And then managing schedules between flatmates and space and things like that. That was sort of the more difficult part.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was oddly smooth.
Yeah.
On my side, yeah.
And then do you work from home majority of the time now?
Yeah, now it's. I mean, I've been working from home since probably March. Yeah.
Yeah. And
every day.
What have you missed about getting out and working in an office?
Oh, I think for me, it's just all the other people and all the different teams.
Yeah.
So I only get to talk to people within my specific area of the business. I don't really get to see the people that I used to walk past and like have banter with.
Yeah.
Or, see at company parties or anything like that.
That's an important point. I mean, Tom, working for BAE as well, it's a really big, huge company, but that's what we've seen a lot of with the guys would say, yeah, there's obviously going to be good and bad points about working from home, but ultimately you miss out on those conversations with guys that aren't in your team. And I would say when I worked on a broken floor with, hundreds of guys, you had your immediate team. And let's say, I mean, we didn't back then, but you'd have had to have been on Zoom calls with them. But it was the guys that sat behind you. You just talked about football. You talked about food. You talked about going out, all these different things. And guys you got to train with in the morning. And that's what we found, a lot of the guys were missing out on was, quite frankly, you're just stuck talking to your colleagues all day. It doesn't mean they're your friends.
Yeah. I've said this on previous Zoom calls that not much changed with Rochester, we shut down for 2 days, purely just to get all the hand sanitizers in, make sure desks were spaced out, and just to prepare us. And then we came back to work, and that's how it's been since. The fact that now majority of the site who can work from home are working from home. The ones that are hands-on, i.e., technicians, and my area of the business, which is quality assurance, is that because we actually handle product and units and items, the fact that we can't work from home, so we have to physically be on site. So not much has changed in that sense. What Sunil was talking about, in the sense of the colleagues and stuff like that. What has changed is space awareness. People walking past the corridors. Basically, it's like giving you a wide berth. It's like, hang on a minute, I don't like him. Let's move away from him. But ideally, it's respecting each other's space. It's about the 2 meter distance that we still have on site. On the shop floor, we wear masks. Now, when you're working on your own at a particular desk, then you don't need to wear them. We've got dividers up, so separating all the desks, but we are 2 meters away and stuff like that. So there is that change. But apart from like the working environment, in the sense of going to and from the office, traveling and stuff, I live about 25 minutes away, so it's reasonably close. So all I do is just travel to and from work, and we just that's what hasn't changed.
Yeah, at least you get the interaction of other people.
Yeah. The interaction of office members is pretty good, actually. We do have banter. I've been in the civil side, the commercial side of the business for 3 years, so I've got to know certain individuals, and we just have banter all the time. Majority of the office is women. There's a few other guys, but it just works. It's good fun, but also seriousness with work. But it just, you can feel there's something around, but ideally we just crack on. That's all we do.
Well, that brings me to a question for both of you. When you're, especially Sunil, when you're working during the day, do you listen to anything, or is it sitting in silence? Because it's an interesting one. Because at work you wouldn't often, you'd have to have earphones in, which then you've got people saying to you, I can't speak to each other. But at home you can have your own environment. So I wondered how it is for you. Is it silence or music or podcasts or?
It depends. I mean, sometimes I'm just playing music, and that's something I did in the office as well. Like in between meetings and things. I found it really, I've always done this actually, especially when I'm need to concentrate. I just put one song on loop and listen to that all day pretty much, and just churn away at something, and then change it up a little bit later on. But yeah, usually like day by day, it changes up between music and YouTube clips and things like that, or just having background something to have something going on to kind of get the juices going.
Break up I know I got into listening to, you can have on YouTube like just focus music, so it's something in the background. Then sometimes I try and put on a podcast, but my brain is listening to the podcast as well as and I can't concentrate on the two things at once. What about you, Thomas?
I listen to podcasts. I listen to Whole Man Academy podcasts.
Correct.
Tick. But I do listen to football podcasts. Mainly the club I support, Charlton. Basically that kind of consists of looking back at the previous game, looking forward to the next game, and also any transfer rumours. I also listen to my own playlists that I have. It's mainly dance and house music, which I kind of have to admit that I bop along to while sitting at my desk.
Careful.
It just keeps me going throughout the day.
Yeah,
I do have lull periods where there is kind of a lack of work coming through, and sticking the podcast in or sticking music in to listen to actually helps the day kind of go quicker.
Yeah.
but also you especially for the podcast kind of thing, is that you're listening to something, and as you said, Ant, that you can't do, like 99% of men, that we can't do two things at once.
Yeah.
But we, I can actually sit there and kind of listen to whoever you're interviewing at that time, and just basically really listen to it and start questioning certain things that come up in the topics that you discuss.
It certainly breaks up the we went on a podcast course with London Real, which is one of the biggest podcasts pretty much in the world now, and they did a 8-week podcast course, and it was so interesting being on that with 30 other people, and some of them wanted to do a podcast but didn't exactly know what they wanted it to be about, and whereas for us, I knew you wanted it to be long form conversations, so not a 10-minute chat with someone, but actually you could break down. Often you find that the first 15 minutes, people are too busy thinking about what they're going to say. And then after a while, they relax and forget that you're recording, and then you get the good stuff coming out. But I just wondered, Sunil, if you had to do a podcast, what would it be about and why?
Oh, I think I've actually considered this before. Actually, it's just interviewing people I'm interested in talking to.
Who would be 2 or 3 of the people that if you could pick anyone?
Oh, that's a big one. I think it'd be from all over the place. I'd probably want to. Well, I'd interview you guys, of course, and a whole Man Academy. But I think just people from different parts of my life, like from the design community to people when I was I was doing a physics degree at some point, so maybe talking to those people and reigniting that knowledge.
Yeah.
And those kind of things, and just sort of delving into different areas of interest and just seeing where it went.
Yeah, no, I think it's surprising how I think people forget that you could start a podcast and it doesn't have to be a business. It could just be that you enjoy, and you'll often find that there's something for everyone in life. So if you're a Charlton supporter, there's be a podcast. If you're into cooking prawns on YouTube, there's probably a podcast on that kind of stuff. So I say and if it isn't one out there, then start your own. That's one of the big things. Tom, I know you'd talk about football.
I'll waffle on more than
waffle on about football. But actually, for me, if I had to guess with Tom, it would have been football. But actually, for me, if I wasn't doing the Whole Man Academy podcast, it would have been about like fitness and sport, and I could talk for hours on football. So why not?
Yeah, you kind of if your knowledge is in that area, then why not? Ant knows this. I of course I used to be a football referee. I did that for 11 years, and I started off doing local park football, and I ended up officiating about three divisions, 3 leagues up from where I used to play. So I got to officiate at a higher standard of football. And going back to what you said, Sunil, is that what you learned back then when you went to university, and your old kind of ex-work colleagues and stuff like that, interview start people who had an influence on your life, kind of thing. Same with me. I for the podcast on that, there's a couple of referees that I would like to interview, which would be Howard Webb, World Cup final referee, same with Mark Clattenburg. But even going back further, the likes of, he's not around now, but Jack Taylor, who officiated the last World Cup. So it is about what your knowledge, your passion, and you can actually get some good information out of people if you are not in the know of that particular subject.
Yeah, that's right. It's it's one of the things we were reminded when you start a podcast. Now, I learn something from every episode, and it might only be one golden nugget that you talk about with the guy. I mean, when Ryan was on from the London Sock Company, and it was right at the end of the podcast where we were talking about collaborations, and people wanting to collaborate with you. And he said, if it's not a fuck yeah, then it's a no for collaboration. And you think that's one of those things that will just, I'll it will stick with me. And fun enough, since then you have someone that said, "Oh, we'd like to do something with you," and I'm like, doesn't really quite feel right. So it certainly isn't a fuck yeah. So therefore,
you normally kind of use your gut feeling, don't you? You know, if it feels good, then you would say fuck yeah. But if you're kind of a little bit kind of taken, well, maybe.
Yeah, you're not sure.
You're not sure.
That sort of excitement.
Yeah. We all need a bit of that. Well, moving on. I remember, March, we pretty much launched the podcast. I think it was about the 19th, 20th of March, something like that. But in April, we started interviewing. One of the guys was David Key, who's a coach that I've worked under. And I knew that he spoke about working under George Pransky, who is based out in the States, who's a brilliant guy who does relationship coaching as well as personal coaching. But I just wondered for you guys, who in the last few years, is there anybody that you kind of you read their books or you look at their YouTube stuff that inspire you? So Neil, let's go to you, contestant number one.
There's a guy that I find really inspiring, and it's more on the cooking side, to be fair, but it's sort of the way he talks about things and the way he explains things really inspire me. And his name is Kenji Lopez. He runs a company called the Food Lab, I think, and it's just amazing. It's less about the cooking for me; it's more about the intricate detail he's gone into and the research he's done to explain that, and it sort of pushes me to do that as well. So I always find that quite inspiring.
How do you
I'm sure there's a few others.
How do you consume his content? Is it books, YouTube's, podcasts?
Mostly through YouTube. He does sort of like a first person shot with a GoPro of him cooking and explaining the science behind what he's doing. From cooking steak to cooking, to cooking. I think he did a stir fry, and he was talking how to do a stir fry in your house using a blowtorch. So I ended up doing that the other day.
I'd love to try and do a stir fry with a blowtorch. We'd end up seeing Fireman Sam or something. Well, the other one was about. Well, actually, Tom, what about yourself? Anybody that you like listen to their podcast that inspire you?
It could be a football theme, so not any particular person. There's the Charlton Athletic that I listen to. There's you, of course. You inspire,
of course,
because that. Yeah, I'm not going to blow smoke up your arse.
Do it, Tom. Do it.
But the fact is that I've known you for so long, and the way that you were back in the late 90s, early 2000s, working in the city, just plugging away and going on nights out, enjoying ourselves as we did in our young 20s, to what you are now and where you've actually kind of come from in the sense of what you've achieved with Whole Man Academy, your family, the house you live in now, to where you were. I think it is an inspiration purely because that you can actually start wherever you want. You've got I've got a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old son and sons, and basically you started your family a lot later than I did,
pretty much 10 years later, wasn't it?
But that doesn't matter. You start it, and the inspiration is that you're getting on with it. You're doing this as well as having your fitness center, or when I say fitness center, I mean your gym next to your house, and you've got clients, and it's that kind of thing where you're just plugging away. You just keep going and keep going, and instead of having a 9-to-5 job in an office, you had aspirations to do something else.
I think
you're doing it.
That's important, is to have the aspirations. We speak a lot on the Whole Man Academy about thinking, what do you want to achieve in life? And one of the important things is to realize that pretty much anything that's worth anything is going to take time. And we see, I know I've been speaking to a guy recently who wants to leave his job and wants to start a small business. My point was, you don't have to leave your job to start the small business, because if you're prepared to put the work in, there's a coach who takes people for a whole year, for a great example, and he'll say, I want you at the end of the week to account for every hour of your day. And you can guarantee there'll be people there that say, let's say, Sunil, let's say you said, I want to start my YouTube channel and do a food podcast. But people will say, I just haven't got time. And you say, well, account for me what you did at the weekend. Oh, well, I went to the gym and I went this way. Okay, what about the week? Oh, well, I actually watched telly from 7 till 9 or from 7 till 10. And you add it up and realize you've watched 15 hours of TV that week. Mm-hmm. And you say, if you really want it, then you don't watch telly. You just, you start your business, you make sales calls, you do your Instagram stuff, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Funny enough, a lot of people just don't want to put the work in. It's a bit like with health and fitness. People want someone else to do it for them, which unfortunately you can't do the press ups for people. Well, that led me into in April. I mean, we'd launched the podcast, and lockdown had happened, and I knew we interviewed Chevy Ruff, who was our longest podcast, and I know I could do a 10-hour podcast with him because he knows so much, and you end up going off on tangents. That was one of our most popular ones, actually, because again, 2.5 hours long form. A lot of people said, do you know what? I listened to it over the course of a week. You don't have to, have two hours set aside straight away. The other one was Daniel Priestley. And one of his books he wrote was Key Person of Influence. And that's, I've been recently talking about it with a client, a guy I've been doing coaching with, who said he wants to earn more money, work less, do all the things that most people seem to want to be able to do. And after being reminded that he's got to put the work in, I explained to him that becoming a key person of influence in his sector doesn't necessarily take a huge amount of work, but it positions you in a way that puts you maybe more in demand and slightly higher profile, which usually means you can charge more and therefore maybe do less work for the same money, or do the same amount of work and earn more money. So for the two of you, I wondered, what kind of books are you reading at the moment? Or is there anything in particular that you're thinking, because I wrote about it the other day, what is the one book that you're like, you know what, I've been meaning to read it, but I just haven't yet? Who wants to go first, Sunil?
I guess that's me then. There's a book that I read quite a while ago that I quite enjoyed. It's called Essentialism. It's sort of big in the business world, I guess, a few years back. And it was all about saying no to things, doing almost like trade-offs. So, you get invited to a meeting, asking a simple questions like, what am I needed in this meeting for? If I'm not needed, I'm going to be out of it. Ping me if I'm needed. That was a great one. The other one was by the Minimalists, called, I think, Everything That Remains. That changed a lot of the way I thought about just how I live my day to day. And the one I'm reading right now is called How to Take Smart Notes, which is all about creating external scaffolding for your brain, and like writing notes and creating this thing called second brain, essentially, where all your knowledge sits and you sort of reference it back and forth using this. It's a great book. I would say just recommend reading it.
Sounds interesting. What was it called again?
It's called How to Take Smart Notes.
How to Take Smart Notes. Yeah,
it talks about a German sociologist, from the 50s, who came up with this thing called Zettelkasten, and it's just a method of taking notes that allows you to reference ideas better and generate more content a lot quicker.
I like it. We could all do with a bit of that.
Yeah.
That it sounds like, I know we spoke about it on podcasts, the book called Getting Things Done by Dave Allen. And that was one of his big things about doing a brain dump. So writing everything that writing the list of everything that you need to do, then sectioning them up into, home, work, health, whatever all the different things are, and then prioritizing them so that, like for us all, we've all got so much going on in our heads. Our brains are revving at whatever your number is, miles per hour. And, your head is for having ideas, not for holding them. So I'm always interested in these kind of books, even if there's a great example with Getting Things Done. It's a decent sized book, but if I took one thing out of it, it was on a Sunday, or whenever you need to, on a Sunday, do a brain dump. So you get everything that's in your head out on paper, which, as we all know, otherwise, when you've got work and you've got partners or you've got things to do with the house, etc., and kids, all these different things that you keep thinking of, to have them out of your head on a paper means you kind of clear a bit of space for slightly more inspiring thoughts. Well, we got through to May, and I know we were then in lockdown, and we interviewed Danny Krates, and Danny was a Paralympian who, when he was, I think, pretty much about 20 years old, had an accident, and which meant he lost his arm. And then let's face it, regrouped, retrained, and won a Paralympic gold medal, and won pretty much all the medals there were around. And that led me, I was thinking about this morning, about resilience, because we all know that at the moment you can, how's the word? There's the word, a description of people being a snowflake. And I think what it means is, they melt when things get hot, as it were. But I just wondered, for both of you, how is it with, like, your own level of resilience? Do you find things piss you off during the day easily, or are you pretty relaxed when it comes to all this?
Yes, I'm getting a little bit wound up about everything that's going on at the moment. It seems that there is no end in sight, and no matter how many times they say it, I can't see there's an end. And it does wind me up, and my family have kind of picked up on that, and now I actually try not to discuss it as much, because my voice, I can find myself, my voice actually getting louder and louder, and I feel myself getting angrier and angrier. So it's kind of, I'm trying to suppress it a little bit by just not talking about it as much. And even, coming on today, I as much as I want to, I don't think it's the right platform for it. So it just angers me about how that we can't seem to just kind of stop and just go, right, now we can just stop, move on, and see how it develops that way. We're constantly in this cycle that I don't think we'll get out of.
Wait till you see what Tier 5 is like.
Oh yes, but even that, but that's the thing. They haven't mentioned Tier 5. It's the press and the the mainstream medias that mention it, which really angers me, because if you think about it, if Tier 4 is what it is now, Tier 5 is just another name for a lockdown. That's all it is.
Well, Tier 5's Tier 5's an upgrade from lockdown, because during lockdown you were allowed to go out. Tier 5 is that you're not allowed to leave your house.
Right. But that kind of thing just does anger me. Moving away from that, football, of course, going back to sport and football, performances for my team, results for my team, kind of wind me up and anger me.
Tom, what about having no crowds? What's that been like? And Sunil, I'm trying to remember. I don't know why. I can't remember if you're into football or not.
I know nothing about football.
No, nothing. But which is basically the same.
I'm always willing to learn, so it's okay.
If you know nothing about football, you could probably support Charlton as well. But Tom, I just wondered, and what's your thoughts on what's it been like watching football with no crowd noise? Because with the fake crowd, it is shit.
Yeah, so it is. It is, and once again, that's the media thing, because it's about having the experience of watching it through your TV, that you can hear the crowd. You can't necessarily see them, but you're actually hearing them.
Yeah.
I think the best people to actually answer that is the actual players themselves.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what their thoughts are on playing in an empty stadium.
And the only reason for that is purely because of motivation. Kind of the crowd get behind the team. So, you're 2-0 down. The crowd don't kind of sit there and wallow and start going, I'm going, and leave the stadium.
Yeah.
They actually start thinking, right, I can see we can turn this. And they start getting behind the team. And that pushes the team on to kind of play better.
Yeah.
Finish better, get that one goal back to
motivation.
Try and reduce the deficit. And it is. And I actually witnessed it in a couple of years ago. I went to Wembley to watch Charlton play in the playoff final against Sunderland again. And after, I think it was about 10, 15 minutes, we were 1-0 down after an own goal. Very bizarre own goal where our centre back passed it back to our goalkeeper, who basically the ball went under his foot and went in. And I witnessed 35,000 fans not go, oh, no, that's it, we're finished.
Yeah.
They actually went, oh, and they
come on,
kind of, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
And we beat Sunderland and we went up to the Championship. So it's that kind of thing where it is motivation. And I think the best people to actually answer that question are the players themselves, because it will mean so much to the players that they've got a crowd to play to motivate them to play better.
I was thinking with any sport at the moment, you know, when you've got, let's say an athlete and you're on the last leg of the last 100 meters of a 400 meter race, and if you've got an entire stadium cheering and erupting around you, I think that gives you an extra, maybe it's extra 1%, but that might be the difference between you either setting a new world record, or be it in football scoring a goal, or doing all these different things. So it'd be interesting to see. I wonder why this year, and that's why the Premier League is so tight at the moment, because you haven't got the advantage. The big clubs haven't got the advantage of the support like they used to. So
no, it's a level playing field. It's a level playing field, but still, it's there is advantage of home and away. You have more home fans than away fans, and that's a given. So they're going to make more noise.
It is something that will be interesting to keep an eye on, is to see the reports of what it's like for sportsmen. Because let's not forget, it was in, I wrote the date down. It was the 12th of June this year that we were supposed to have Euro 2020, which is now supposedly going to be next year. But are they still going to call it Euro 2020? There's a question for you.
That is a question.
just to confuse people. Well, here's a funny one. It was on, I'm trying to think. I went and met Andy Murphy, who was on our podcast in July. I went and met him in June, actually, the night before, or the night that Liverpool won the Premier League. But we had Andy Murphy on the show a few weeks later. And one of his big things was about, if you've got, if you've got someone that you're coaching and they've got a problem, he kind of says, why are you telling me? Just fix it. What can you do to fix the problem? Which I always think for a lot of people at the moment, it's always easy to moan about what's going on. But then there's a question of what are you actually doing about it, or to rectify it. So have either of you got anything you can think of at the moment that, has been kind of bugging you? That I know for me, we had an issue with a leak in one of our buildings, and I'd asked someone to come and fix it, and he kept pissing me around for months and months. In the end, I was like, fuck it. Why haven't I just called the company and ordered all the parts myself? It sounds so simple, but I'd probably spent more time moaning about it than I had actually getting on with it. So Sunil, anything in your life at the moment, even if it's a leaky tap, that you're like, fuck it, I've got to get it done?
I mean, right now it's sort of just settling into a new flat, but I think just before it was trying to settle, getting this flat sorted out, and dealing with estate agents and getting that kind of all that paperwork and things sorted out. Was my big hassle. Right now, it's actually everything's weirdly going well. With knock on wood,
relaxed,
which is a bit strange. But maybe something will come up today. Who knows? But yeah, it's generally like all that admin. Admin generally always gets me quite stressed because it's quite inefficient. And then I'm like, and then I start like, should I redesign it? Should I not redesign it? And do I tweet about this? Do I not tweet about this? Will that affect me? Will it not affect me? That kind of stuff. So, but generally admin always pisses me off. So yeah.
I hear you. I think we've all got that where levels of admin, and you're just like, hence why you just want to be able to pay someone else to take care of it if you could. Just
exactly.
Empty the in tray. That was it. I went on the Tony Robbins one of their conferences over in Tenerife, and was it Miami? I can't remember. But before I went on it, they sent me this long questionnaire, and one of the things was about write down all the little things that are bugging you. And it was so funny because there's nothing. And then and then it kind of said, stop, go back, now write down. And when you realize there was, it could be a leaky tap or a squeaky door or all these different bits and pieces. And then it asks you, what was the next step? You did it in a way of, what is it? What would solve the problem and how long it would take? And it was so funny how with most of them, actually, it would only take 5 minutes or you just needed to buy one bit. But we let all these little niggly bits build up. Whereas if you could wave a magic wand and someone either does it or you say, do you know what, next Saturday, I'm gonna spend the whole day getting all these things done. It's so funny how, you can decide to piss and moan about it all the time, or you can say, I'm going to get shit done. Well, let's move on to August, because in the summer, I'm guessing pretty much all of us missed out on some kind of holiday, Sunil, especially I know a lot of people during summer lockdown were drinking a lot more. So how did you, how was the summer lockdown for you?
It was summer lockdown. Going back into lockdown was a bit tough because obviously we had this sort of like eat out to help out. There was a bit of a freedom going out, meet mates, socially distant at pubs and stuff.
Yeah.
And going out to dinners. For me, it was being able to go out and date as well, because obviously we'd been locked down, can't do any of that.
Yeah.
So that pretty much shut down dating life again going into lockdown. And now obviously we're in the same thing right now.
Yeah.
So that was quite tough going from like, going in and out of dating and going in and out of like being able to chill out with your mates and actually go out and be social, and meet, also like just talk to people who weren't in your group of people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think it's easy for couples who, are together and live together. Sorry, I'm not saying it's easy for them, because then you have to live with your partner, which no one says that's easy.
No.
But if you're single and ready to mingle, and maybe even do more than just mingle, then it's been a bit of a shit year. So the sooner that, especially I always worry about the 18, 19, 20-year-olds that should be going out, and we were going out pretty much Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, partying. Some of the nights we even remembered. But they're missing out on that kind of stuff. We saw a lot of people that I know that said they found they were drinking a lot more through the summer because they were at home, which I found was quite easy, which led us on to, I know, in October we were approached by Mr. Porter, one of the world's biggest kind of online men's clothing stores, as it were, to say, which is nice, to say, we like what you're doing, could we would you interview Dan Davis, who was their editorial director, for their campaign, which was all about, and this is why we liked it, about encouraging you to just talk to your mates, and not just the usual, how you doing, how's the football, etc., etc. And it was interesting because I'd said a few weeks before that in one of my podcasts and e-letter, instead of listening to the podcast a day for an hour, do me a favor and just, call 3 of your mates and see how they're doing. So Sunil, how about for yourself? Have you found like you've managed to see some of your mates recently and actually get out and about, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got a new flatmate. We get along really well. So we've been definitely chatting a lot. But then we had a really good tight group of mates. We just got a WhatsApp group, and we have a Zoom call pretty much every 3-4 days.
Excellent.
Whether it's just chat or it's playing video games together, or I think yesterday we were doing some sort of scavenger hunt. So there's all those kind of things as well, and then also reconnecting with, like, I reconnected with one of my cousins in the middle of the year, and now we have like hour-long phone calls, which is really great because we've never really had that relationship before.
Yeah, that's important, is to adapt, isn't it? Because Zoom's never going to replace actually being in the room with someone, but distance means that you can, like we can do podcasts today that if we'd have tried to do it in a studio, it probably wouldn't have happened. So that's one of the important things, is saying, reconnect. I always say to guys, reconnect with the people from your past, maybe, who, I think people lose touch also just because we didn't grow up. Tom and I are both 40. What are we, 42 now?
2, yeah.
Yeah, just checking. We didn't grow up with Zoom and Skype and WhatsApp video calls, so it's not massively in your nature to do that. Whereas kids today will, FaceTime their friends or whatever all the time. So that's one thing for the guys watching, is I always say, reconnect with. It might be a friend in a different country or that you haven't spoke to for a while, but be surprised how much fun it can be when you get in touch with those people that you wouldn't normally do. So Sunil, how about yourself? If you could only pick 2 mates to have a Zoom call with, who would they be and why?
Oh man, I mean, they'll all kill me if I mean, so I always chat to my good mate Simon. We were chatting last night actually, and Steve as well. Simon and Steve, generally we always chat. But then honourable mention to Jin and Mark as well.
Yeah.
who are good old schoolmates as well that we chat, but that's more infrequent.
Oh, I think it's nice to have a bit of a mixture. Tom and I speak a lot. Probably we don't have long conversations because we've got kids hanging around our neck or something like that, so it doesn't make it that easy. But that was very much the Mr. Porter's time for him campaign, was just encouraging guys to bother to connect again with those that they haven't spoken to for a while, and especially those in another country. Well, November saw us launch our most watched, listened to podcast we've ever done. Unsurprisingly, it was because it was with Mr. David Gandy, and I think we saw a spike in our subscriptions because he put it on his Instagram stories, which always helps when he's got 1 million followers. So unsurprisingly, there was a spike in it. But one of the things he said on that, which we used, was about when he was talking about developing cars, and we spoke about lots of other things, but he said, in life, it's the adventure of trying to achieve what I want to achieve. And I know that for a lot of people, it is about, I know it might sound a bit wanky, but it is about the journey, if that makes sense. And, if you are trying to achieve something, it's often the people you meet, the things you learn, and the experiences you have along the way. So Sunil, how about yourself? With your years in the business you're in now, how would you describe what one or two things you've learned from all the people around you?
I learned everything from everyone around me. For instance, I work with a massive design team, and they're all multi-talented. Some have been working in design for just a couple of years. Some have been working in design for 20 plus years. Yeah. And some of them being game designers and all sorts. So it can just be an odd question that you throw out in a meeting or something, or just in a bit of chat, and they're like, "Oh, actually, I worked on something like that. So that was similar to that. Let me show you how I went through that process, etc." So a lot of times it's just little things like that they worked on in the past that end up influencing now you in the present. Yeah. And it's the same thing from talks and things like that, learning from other people's and other companies' journeys and how they went through things.
Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it, how you can, but like I said on podcasts, you can spend time around with people, and sometimes they just need to ask you one question. I know at our one of our events at South Place Hotel, and John, one of the chaps that's there, asked one of the speakers. He said, "What do you live for?" And it was great because you could see everybody kind of looking up, thinking, "What do I answer to that question? What do I live for?" Because the obvious one is, be it, for Tom and I, it would be our family and our kids necessarily. But if you said, okay, look, you're not allowed to say family and kids. What do you as a man live for? You're like, shit. I don't know.
What would you say?
Yeah,
it is almost. Give me 10 minutes. Give me half a day. I'll get back to you, because there probably is so much stuff that you can actually think of to answer that question. But what you're looking for is that one thing that will just pinpoint what you actually are living for, excluding the family as well.
The obvious. One of the I spent some time thinking about it, and for me, because I got asked it again ages ago, was I said I live for a life of adventure. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be climbing a mountain, but I want it to be experiences. So let's say by the end of the year, and it's been a bit more difficult with this ridiculous lockdown stopping everything you're doing, but you want to be able to get to the end of the year and not. I was in danger at one point of just saying every weekend, I went to the gym, I got drunk on a Friday night, I went to the gym, I watched soccer Saturday, and then on Sunday I went to the gym and I, had a hangover. And so there's nothing wrong with those things, but I was like, do I want my whole year to consist of those? And that's around the time that I got into, call it personal development, and started training, doing obstacle course racing, so that it gave me something else. At the end of the year, I could say I've run to the top of Snowdon and back down. I've competed in the World Championships. I've competed in the UK Championships, and that gave me something to work on, which I think is priceless, to be honest. Which leads us on to December being Christmas month. How has Christmas been for you, Sunil?
Christmas was quite nice, actually. To be fair, generally I don't really usually do anything. My preference is to just stay at home.
Yep.
Not travel anywhere, and just have like a day to myself. But But this year, my flatmate made some nice Christmas dinner, did little Christmas presents, some Zooms with parents and siblings and things like that. So that was good fun. It was a weirdly special Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that sounds good to me. And Thomas?
Yeah.
With me, it was my mum came over, so it was me, my wife, and Luke and Ben. We had traditional Christmas dinner as normal, open presents from everybody as everybody dropped them off beforehand.
Yeah.
Leading up to Christmas Day. So we did everything in that day, and it was nice because it was just us. And I think if you think about it, it is special. Yes, you can go and visit family. You can go and spend a couple of days away with your extended family as well, and basically just kind of, it's like 15, 20 people, and we all have fun, drink, play games and stuff. Yeah. But ideally, the main bulk of it is, and Ant knows about this as well, is it is family part. It is, having your wife there and having two children, and you're just looking at their faces as they open presents, what you got them, and what they want, what they exactly wanted. So
yeah,
you can't. That is priceless. That is priceless.
I must say, on Christmas morning when we went into Hudson, our little one's room, and he's like three and a bit. But when he woke up and saw that Santa had been overnight and had left him his presents, it is a priceless experience to see little kids.
Gives you a warm feeling.
Yeah,
gives you a really warm feeling. Doesn't it?
I think that was the mulled wine actually. But no, well, that's why it's important. The more people I spoke to, they've made the best of a bad situation with lockdown, and as you say, with working from home. I think that's the important thing. It's all about your mindset. I certainly hope things return back to normal as soon as possible. Not least because it means we can get together in London for burgers, beers, or whatever other cuisine we can sniff out. But I just think it's important that we all get back to proper interaction, because as we know, Zoom calls are all good and stuff like that, but there's nothing like going out with your mates, having a beer or a coffee or a walk around the park, whatever it is, and talking about stuff that's important to them, just to let off a bit of steam, basically, which is exactly why we're up to, I think this is episode 54 or 55 of the podcast, something like that, because it's nice. We've got guys listening to the podcast from something like 35 to 40 different countries. And that just reminds you that, you never know who's listening and who is taking value out of listening to guys talk about stuff that's important to them, to be honest.
Certainly don't.
So, well, chaps, look, I know it's a Tuesday afternoon and you probably want to get back to eating turkey stew, turkey sandwiches, and just raw turkey. So as always, I appreciate your time and your input as well. And this will go out in a couple of days. So I'll get the links over to you. And if you're able to share it, that will be splendificus.
Certainly will do.
Brilliant, guys. All right. I'll speak to you soon.
All right.
Yeah.
See you later.
Bye.
See you later, Neil.